Can we talk about this? Can you take that sack off and we talk about this like a couple of men? Goddamn hillbilly Jason. Hey, welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone's doing well out there. And today we're heading back to Camp Crystal Lake, well, sort of, for Friday 13th Part 2 as our journey through the Friday 13th franchise once again because of this box set right here. And Part 2 came out May 1st of 1981, just under a year from the release of the original film. The original film got released May 9th of 1980, so they cranked this one out pretty quick. This one's rated R, as they all are, and it was an hour and 27 minutes long, a little bit shorter than the first film, and it had an increased budget of $1.25 million. The first one had a $550,000 budget, and upon release it made $21.7 million. Not as much as the first film, but still quite a nice sum of money considering the budget that Paramount gave them or they raised to make this film. And to direct this film, Sean Cunningham wasn't interested in coming back to do another film in the franchise, so he handed it over to his protege Steve Miner, who was an associate producer on the first film and had worked with Sean Cunningham on his 70s family films, and he even helped out on Last House on the Left in that, so he was a friend of Sean Cunningham and the obvious choice to hand the reins over to him because he wanted to become a director. Now, Steve Miner, after this, went on to do Warlock, other horror films like House, Halloween H2O, Lake Placid. He's done a couple other films, and then he works in TV, still working to this day. Now, in this film, we have Amy Steele as Jenny, our final girl of the film. Adriana King came back as Alice, and she's only in it a little bit at the beginning of the film, and we'll get into that in a second. Warrington Gillette plays Jason. Oh, that is disputed. They say the stuntman on the film, Steve Dash, I think his name was, said he did most of the Jason stuff. The only real scene that Warrington Gillette played Jason is at the end when Jason comes crashing through the window. Who knows, but that's what is said. It is what it is. And this film supposedly takes place 5 years after the happenings of the first Friday the 13th film. And in the beginning of the film, we see Alice living alone in this apartment in this little town. You would think this chick would have moved far away from Camp Crystal Lake, but apparently she's not that far because Jason tracks her ass down. Who knows? Don't know. Can't think about this shit too much, just like the rest of the franchise. But in this one, there's a, Jason even uses the telephone to prank her at one point. How Jason knew how to use a phone, who knows? He's been living in the woods for the last how many years. But what the hell? We'll just go along with it. And there's a jump scare with a cat, and we follow Alice around her apartment. The prologue, the beginning of this film takes about 15 minutes until the credits roll. And then finally, Alice goes to open up her refrigerator. Mrs. Voorhees' head is in there. Jason grabs her and stuffs an ice pick through her head. And we see the titles come right shooting at us and explode. And we get a title sequence and we're on with the rest of our story. And the only reason Adriana King, supposedly she didn't want to be in this film that much because since the release of the first film and the success of it, she had gotten some stalkers and had some issues. So she just wanted to come in, do a quick, her part quickly and get out because she was having issues with some guys that were stalking her. Then we're introduced to our new camp counselors that are working at this camp that's on the same same lake as Crystal Lake, but not at Camp Crystal Lake. Camp Crystal Lake's on the lake, but it's down the ways a little bit. But some of the counselors are very interested in wanting to explore Crystal Lake. And this is basically like a training camp for counselors just to get them ready for the season. And we're introduced to Jenny, Paul, her would-be boyfriend. You can tell they've been romantic in the past. And Paul runs this camp and a bunch of new counselors. And not too far after this film, the thing I got to say about this one moves pretty quickly. Crazy Ralph's still around. He shows up to tell them they're all doomed, and he gets killed pretty quickly. Once we were introduced to them, we have this campfire scene with this fake scare that Paul sets up with this other counselor, which is pretty well done. The way he gives this ghost story around the campfire about Jason. Once that happens and some of the group decides to go into town to a bar, the killings happen pretty quick. So the pace of this film, it's only an hour and 27 minutes long, it moves pretty quick. People start getting killed in gruesome ways. We have the young couple that's having sex. We get the double impalement with the spike through them, which had to be cut down, by the way, to get a rated R. The MPA was going to give them a rated X for that. Matter of fact, 45 seconds of gore was cut out of this film so they can get a rated R and not get the dreaded rated X rating. Because they wouldn't be able to release it or advertise it in newspapers or anything. And then we get the cool kill with the guy that's in the wheelchair that gets the meat cleaver right to the face and he goes backwards down the stairs. I always love that one. And then the girl that Jason slowly coming at her with the butcher knife, which I recreated for the beginning of this review. Some really cool kills. I don't think some of them aren't. The meat cleaver one's pretty violent. I mean, I think it's on par with the first one. Tom Savini didn't come back and do the effects on this one. He didn't really want to because he didn't understand how Jason's the killer, where Jason was meant to be the figment of her imagination in the first one, so he never got it. Although obviously Tom Savini came back in part 4 to kill Jason. Well, he thought to kill Jason. You can never count these guys out though. So at first they hired Stan Winston to come in. Stan Winston had a scheduling conflict, so he left the project, and they had to bring in another makeup effects guy, Carlton Fullerton, and he did the makeup effects on this film. So anyway, Paul and Jenny come back from the bar. They find some shady stuff that they didn't believe, some nasty shit went down. Jason shows up with his white sack and his hillbilly clothes. This is always referred to as Hillbilly Jason. And Paul gets knocked out, and we get that cat and mouse through the woods with Jenny and Jason. And Jenny finds Jason's shack out in the middle of the woods, which looks like pretty good real estate. I went to buy that for some vacation property. And she dresses up as Mrs. Voorhees. She finds the severed head and the sweater, and she dresses up like Mrs. Voorhees, fools Jason into kneeling before her, clips him with the machete, but not enough. Jason blocks her, and then there's a struggle. Paul shows up. He fights with Jason. Jason's about to kill Paul when Jenny comes up and buries the machete in his shoulder blade, and we think Jason's dead. But as we know, there has to be one last jump scare, and we get that scene with Jenny sitting on the bed and Jason smashing through the window and grabbing her, and she gets loaded into the ambulance. We don't know what the hell happened to Paul, even to this day, and that's the end of Friday the 13th Part 2. Well, they do close on Mrs. Voorhees' head back at the shack, and that's the end of the film. Originally, they did film an ending where Mrs. Voorhees' eyes opened up, the severed head eyes opened up, and she smiled, but they decided to cut it because they said it didn't look good, and it kind of was a little silly, which you could see how that would just be totally out of nowhere. Overall, rewatching this again, the transfer on this one is spectacular from Screen Factory. It looks great. And it was a 4K transfer on a Blu-ray. It looks really good. They did a really nice job with it. I've always enjoyed Part 2, but I even enjoyed it a little bit more. Yes, I know Amy Steele is our final girl. She's not in it. She's in it just enough that we care about her, and she makes a good final girl for sure. She's one of the better ones of the series. I didn't say best. I just said one of the better ones. And I like her cat and mouse with Jason at the end, that last chase sequence before we get to his little shack in the woods, his humble abode. But overall, I like her as a final girl. She's not in it a whole lot, though. When they go to the bar, we do focus on these kids at the camp that get killed off pretty quickly. Like I said, the pace moves really fast. A lot faster than Part 3. I'm going to do Part 3 next week. And rewatching Part 3, I always like Part 3, and of course it's iconic because he gets the mask in that one. But it drags considerably through portions of that film. And the 3D effects hold it back because they were more worried about 3D than some of the other aspects of the filmmaking, you can tell. So I actually enjoyed this one more than I enjoyed Part 3 this time around, although I'm going to rewatch Part 3 again and review it. But I really enjoyed watching this. I think it's a good sequel to the first one. Yes, there's some gaps in logic with the timeline and Jason tracking down Alice and being in the film and using a phone. He never does that in the rest of the series, but in this one, it's magic and it just happens. But again, you can't really think about these films too much or you're going to pick them apart in a heartbeat. But overall, it's a fun sequel to the original film and reintroducing Jason to us as an adult, although this time with the hillbilly outfit and the white sack. But overall, I enjoyed this film. I would give Part 2 a 7 out of 10. It's an enjoyable slasher film that furthered the franchise. And yeah, I enjoyed this sequel. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for Friday the 13th Part 2. What are your thoughts on the sequel to the original Friday the 13th? Leave a comment down below, let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this video. I greatly would appreciate that. I'll be back in a few days with Fear Street Part 2, 1978. I can't wait to do that review. And then next week, I'll be back with Friday the 13th Part 3. So until then, bye.